Imagine stepping into this room and the door locks behind you. You have to stay here for exactly 30 minutes. No phone, no music, no notebook. Just you, one chair, and absolute silence. Ask yourself honestly, how would you feel as those minutes ticked by? Would you find a sense of peace or a creeping, undeniable discomfort? It is a common belief today that we suffer from a collective attention problem. But look closely at our daily habits, and a different reality emerges. We do not struggle to pay attention. We are simply addicted to noise. When the mind cannot tolerate its own company, it stays tethered to the surface of its environment. The depth required for complex thought remains out of reach until that tension is resolved. Notice what happens the instant a moment of boredom arises, in a line, on a train, or waiting for a meeting. The immediate, almost involuntary reflex is to reach for a screen to fill the void. This constant stream of external stimulation creates a layer of noise that actively drowns out the brain's internal voice, keeping original ideas submerged. Yet, when we examine the habits of the most prolific empire builders in history, a stark contrast appears. Instead of avoiding boredom, they intentionally engineered empty space into their daily routines. They were not doing this to rest. They were extracting a specific advantage from the silence, a cognitive mechanism that the modern world has largely forgotten. Take Andrew Carnegie. In the late 19th century, he commanded one of the largest steel empires on Earth. His daily reality was the deafening roar of blast furnaces, thousands of workers, and an endlessly complex, chaotic supply chain. But when the most critical, high-stakes decisions arose, Carnegie did not stay on the factory floor, and he did not seek out more reports. He retreated into absolute, deliberate isolation. He recognized that complex problem-solving eventually hits a point of diminishing returns with new information. Breaking through relied on subtracting data and allowing the mind room to process what it already held. Most people operate by letting the world dictate their thoughts. They consume, they react to daily inputs, and they move on to the next distraction. Living purely in a state of reaction creates a highly predictable, average outcome. It is the deliberate, quiet reflection on that information that builds extraordinary leverage. This historical habit maps perfectly onto modern neurobiology. When external sensory input drops to zero, the human brain does not power down. The absence of distraction triggers the background network, a cognitive state dormant while you consume information. This network drives high-level processing. It scans stored memories, handles pattern recognition, and synthesizes completely unrelated pieces of old data into novel concepts. You have likely felt this mechanism at work, the sudden arrival of a solution during a shower or a quiet walk, moments after the active mind finally lets go of its task. Silence is not an absence of activity. It is the required biological ignition switch for high-tier cognitive function. The empty room protocol requires strict constraints: 30 minutes, one chair, and no digital devices. When you sit, expect intense mental friction and a craving to escape. But if you hold your ground, your mind wanders, eventually scanning the void for any stimulation. Then the environment shifts. The mental noise finally settles, and you begin to clearly hear your own buried, high-value thoughts. That initial discomfort is not a flaw in the exercise. It is the necessary friction that forces your brain out of endless consumption and into deep processing. We often measure luxury in terms of physical assets or technological convenience. But in an increasingly loud society, true luxury is securing uninterrupted processing time. The modern digital economy is perfectly optimized to harvest your attention, turning your constant distraction into its primary source of profit. Reclaiming mental sovereignty requires stepping out of that cycle. Your ability to build relies entirely on weaponizing your attention for your own goals. Spend 30 minutes in intentional silence. The single unforced insight you discover in that room can provide the clarity that months of consumption never could. Subscribe to Codex Aurum for more hidden mental frameworks used by history's most extraordinary minds.